Caleb Hunter stood amidst the ruins of his childhood home, his calloused hands trembling as he clutched the yellowed divorce papers. Outside, the siren of a delivery truck blared. His ex-wife was picking up their daughter for the last time before he lost full custody. But when the door opened, a strange woman stepped across the street, her eyes devoid of pity. Only something more dangerous: belief. "Will you stay this time?" Vivian asked, and Caleb knew the answer would decide everything. Follow my story to the end, like and comment the city you're viewing to let me know how far this story has come. The house looked worse than Caleb remembered. He stood in the driveway with his truck idling behind him, staring at the sagging porch and the windows covered in grime so thick you couldn't see through them anymore. The paint had peeled away in long strips, exposing rotted wood underneath. The roof had a visible dip in the middle, like the whole structure was slowly giving up. Caleb killed the engine. Silence pressed in from all sides. Clover Ridge hadn't changed much in 12 years. Same two-lane Main Street, same hardware store with the faded awning, same mountains in the distance, blue and indifferent. He'd driven past his old high school on the way in and felt nothing, just tired. He was 32 years old and felt 50. The passenger door opened. Lily climbed out slowly, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her face blank in that way that killed him. She was 9 now, 9 years old, and she looked at him like he was a stranger doing her a favor. "This is it?" she asked. "Yeah." "It's ugly." "Yeah." She walked toward the porch without waiting for him. Caleb grabbed 2 duffel bags from the truck bed and followed. The steps groaned under his weight. One of them had cracked clean through. He made a mental note to fix it, then wondered if he'd actually do it or just keep stepping over it for months. The front door stuck. He had to shoulder it open. Inside smelled like mildew and old carpet, and something else he couldn't name. Dust hung in the air, visible in the afternoon light coming through the broken blinds. Lily stood in the middle of the living room, turning slowly. "Where's my room?" "Upstairs. Second door on the left." She headed for the stairs without another word. Caleb watched her go, then set the bags down and exhaled. This was home now. This wreck. This monument to everything his old man had let fall apart before he died. Caleb walked through the ground floor, taking inventory. The kitchen faucet dripped. The linoleum was peeling. There was a water stain on the ceiling in the corner that looked recent. He opened the fridge and immediately closed it. The smell was unholy. He heard Lily moving around upstairs. A door opened, closed, opened again. "There's no bed up here," she called down. "I know. I'll get one tomorrow." "Where am I supposed to sleep tonight?" "I brought sleeping bags." Silence. Then footsteps. She appeared at the top of the stairs, staring down at him with that same flat expression. "You said we were moving into a house." "We did." "This isn't a house. It's a dump." Caleb felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he got every time she looked at him like that, like he'd let her down again, which he had, constantly. "It'll be better," he said. "I'm going to fix it up." "Sure." "I mean it." She turned and walked back to her room. The door closed. Not slammed, just closed. Somehow that was worse. Caleb stood alone in the living room and tried to remember why he thought coming back here was a good idea. The sun was setting when he finally went outside to unload the rest of the truck. The neighborhood was quiet. A few houses down, someone was mowing their lawn. Across the street, a porch light came on. That's when he saw her. She was standing on the porch of the house directly opposite his, watering a row of plants in ceramic pots. She wore jeans and a plain white shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Mid-30s, maybe. She glanced up and caught him staring. Caleb looked away quickly and grabbed another box from the truck bed. "New neighbor?" He turned. She'd set down the watering can and was walking across the street toward him. Not hesitant, just direct. "Yeah," Caleb said. "Vivian Cole." She extended a hand. He shook it. Her grip was firm. "Caleb Hunter." "You bought the Dawson place?" "Inherited it. My old man died 6 months ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be, we weren't close." Vivian nodded, not pushing it. She glanced at the house. "You planning to renovate?" "That's the idea." "Big project." "I know." She studied him for a moment, and Caleb had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing more than he wanted to show. People usually looked at him and saw a construction worker. Broad shoulders, calloused hands, the kind of guy who could lift heavy things. That was it. But Vivian's eyes were sharp, assessing. "You do this kind of work?" she asked. "Used to. Been doing commercial jobs the last few years. High-rises, mostly." "Where?" "All over. Denver, Phoenix, Seattle." "Traveling crew?" "Yeah." "Hard life." Caleb shrugged. "Pays well." "Does it?" The question caught him off guard. Not the words, but the way she said them, like she already knew the answer. Before he could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway. "Dad, the toilet doesn't work." Vivian's expression shifted slightly. Surprised, maybe, or just curious. "I'll look at it," Caleb called back. Lily stayed in the doorway watching them. "Your daughter?" Vivian asked. "Yeah, Lily." Vivian raised a hand in a small wave. "Hi, Lily." Lily didn't wave back, just stared. "She's shy," Caleb lied. "No, she's not," Lily said flatly, and went back inside. Vivian smiled, but it was a soft smile. Understanding. "How old?" 9. "Tough age." "They're all tough." Vivian looked at him again with that same measuring gaze. Then she nodded once. "If you need anything, I'm right across the street." "Thanks." She walked back to her house, picking up the watering can and resuming her task like the conversation had never happened. Caleb watched her for a second longer than he should have, then grabbed the last box and headed inside. That night, Lily refused to eat the fast food he'd brought home. She sat cross-legged in her sleeping bag on the floor of her empty room, scrolling through a tablet her mother had given her. Caleb stood in the doorway. "You need to eat something." "I'm not hungry." "Lily." "I said I'm not hungry." He wanted to push, wanted to tell her she couldn't just stop eating because she was mad at him. But he was so tired, and every time he opened his mouth around her lately, he said the wrong thing. "All right," he said quietly. "Good night." She didn't respond. He went downstairs and sat on the couch, which was the only piece of furniture in the whole house. It smelled like his father, stale beer and cigarettes. Caleb pulled out his phone and stared at the screen, thumb hovering over his ex-wife's contact. He didn't call. Instead, he opened the job offers folder. 3 messages from contractors in other states. Big projects. Good money. One in Austin was offering $75 an hour, 6-month contract, housing stipend included. He could take it. Leave Lily with her mom for a while, just until he saved enough to actually make this place livable. His ex wouldn't fight him on it. She'd probably prefer it. Caleb closed the folder. He thought about Vivian's question. Does it pay well? Not the way she meant. Much fun? The next morning, Caleb woke up on the couch with his neck screaming. Sunlight was pouring through the broken blinds. He checked his phone. 7:42 a.m. He got up, stretched, and walked into the kitchen. Lily was already awake, sitting at the counter with a granola bar. "Morning," he said. She didn't look up. Caleb filled a glass with tap water and drank it, trying to ignore the metallic taste. He needed to check the pipes. Needed to check everything. "I'm going to the hardware store," he said. "You want to come?" "No." "You can't stay here alone?" "Why not?" "Because you're 9. "So?" Caleb rubbed his face. "Just come with me, Lily, please." She sighed loudly, the way only a 9-year-old can, and slid off the stool. They drove into town in silence. The hardware store was the same as it had been when Caleb was a kid, right down to the bell that jingled when you opened the door. The owner, Ed Marlowe, glanced up from behind the counter and did a double take. "Caleb Hunter?" "Hey, Ed." "Holy hell, heard you were back." Ed came around the counter, wiping his hands on his apron. He was older now, grayer, but still built like a bulldog. "Heard about your old man, too. Tough break." "Yeah. What brings you in?" "Need to start fixing up the house. Gonna need a lot." Ed whistled. "That place is a project. Your dad let it go pretty bad toward the end." "I noticed." Lily wandered off toward the paint aisle, bored. Caleb spent the next 20 minutes walking the aisles with Ed, listing out everything he needed. Drywall, 2x4s, plumbing supplies, roofing materials. The list got longer and longer, and the mental tally in Caleb's head climbed higher and higher. You got help? Ed asked. Just me. Big job for one guy. I've done bigger. Ed gave him a look that said he didn't quite believe that, but he didn't argue. They loaded everything into the truck bed. Caleb paid with a credit card that was already close to maxed out and tried not to think about it. On the drive back, Lily finally spoke. Are we really staying here? Caleb glanced at her. Yeah. Why? Because it's ours. It's a dump. I'm going to fix it. You always say that. The words hit harder than they should have. Caleb tightened his grip on the wheel. This time I mean it, he said. Lily stared out the window. Mom says you always mean it. Caleb didn't respond. What could he say? She was right. By noon, he was tearing out the rotted section of the porch. The wood came apart in his hands, soft and crumbling. He worked fast, trying to outrun the thoughts in his head. Lily sat on the front steps, watching him with the same blank expression. Can I help? She asked eventually. Caleb looked up, surprised. You want to? She shrugged. He handed her a crowbar. Here, pull up those loose boards. She took it and started prying, awkward at first, then getting the hang of it. For a few minutes, they worked side by side in silence. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then a voice called from across the street. Need an extra pair of hands? Caleb turned. Vivian was walking over, carrying a cooler. I'm good, he said. You look like you're about to pass out from heat stroke. She wasn't wrong. It was pushing 90 degrees and he'd been working in the sun for 2 hours straight. Vivian set the cooler down and opened it. Inside were bottles of water and sandwiches wrapped in plastic. I made too much lunch, she said. Caleb wiped sweat from his forehead. You didn't have to do that. I know. Lily was already reaching for a sandwich. Vivian smiled at her. Turkey or ham? Turkey. Good choice. Caleb took a water bottle and drank half of it in one go. Vivian sat down on the steps next to Lily, completely unfazed by the heat or the mess. How long have you been working on this? Vivian asked. Since this morning. You're making good progress. Not fast enough. Rome wasn't built in a day. Caleb almost laughed. This isn't Rome. It's a rotting porch. Still, Lily finished her sandwich and stood up. Can I go inside and play on my tablet? Yeah, Caleb said. Stay in the living room where I can see you. She disappeared into the house. Vivian watched her go, then turned to Caleb. She doesn't talk much, does she? Not to me. Why not? Caleb set down the water bottle. Because I've been gone most of her life. Vivian didn't say anything, just nodded slowly, like she understood. I was chasing jobs, Caleb continued, not sure why he was even telling her this. Big money, big projects. Always telling myself it was for her future. But I missed everything, birthdays, school plays, her first lost tooth. He shook his head. Her mom finally had enough. Filed for divorce 2 years ago. Can't blame her. But you're here now. Yeah. That counts for something. Does it? Vivian met his eyes. Ask her in a year. Caleb looked away. A year felt impossible. He couldn't even imagine a month from now. Why'd you come back? Vivian asked. Didn't have anywhere else to go. That's not an answer, Caleb exhaled. I'm tired. I'm tired of running. Tired of living out of motel rooms. Tired of being a stranger to my own kid. He gestured at the house. This place is a wreck. But it's mine. And maybe if I can fix it, I can fix everything else too. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up. You will, she said simply. How do you know? Because you're still here. She picked up the cooler and walked back across the street, leaving Caleb alone with that thought. No. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Caleb worked on the house from dawn until dark. Lily mostly kept to herself, though sometimes she'd come outside and hand him tools or hold a board steady while he nailed it in place. She didn't say much, but she showed up. That was something. Vivian came by every afternoon with food, sometimes sandwiches, sometimes fruit. Once she brought an entire casserole that Lily actually ate without complaining. You don't have to keep doing this, Caleb said one evening as Vivian handed him a plate of pasta. I know. So why do you? Because you need help, and I can give it. Caleb frowned. You don't even know me. Not yet. There was something in the way she said it, not flirtatious, not pitying, just honest. What do you do? Caleb asked. For work, I mean. Investments, mostly. That paying well? Vivian smiled. Better than construction. Everyone's does. She laughed, and the sound was lighter than he expected. You're probably right. That night, after Lily went to bed, Caleb sat on the newly rebuilt porch and stared across the street at Vivian's house. The lights were on in the living room. He could see her moving around inside, watering plants, straightening books on a shelf. She lived alone, as far as he could tell. No car in the driveway except hers, no voices, just her. He wondered what her story was. On Friday, a black SUV pulled up in front of Vivian's house. Caleb was on the roof, replacing shingles, when he noticed it. A man stepped out. Tall, mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that looked ridiculous in a neighborhood like this. He walked up to Vivian's door and knocked. Vivian answered. Even from a distance, Caleb could see her body language shift, tense, guarded. The man said something. Vivian shook her head. He stepped closer. She stepped back. Caleb set down his hammer. The man raised his voice. Caleb couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Angry. Demanding. Vivian tried to close the door. The man stopped it with his hand. Caleb was off the roof and across the street before he even registered moving. Hey! Both of them turned. The man looked annoyed. Vivian looked relieved? Or maybe just surprised. Can I help you? The man asked, voice dripping with condescension. Just checking if everything's all right, Caleb said, looking at Vivian. Everything's fine, the man said. This is a private conversation. I wasn't asking you. The man's jaw tightened. He was used to people backing down. Caleb could tell. Probably used to getting his way with money or threats, or both. Vivian? Caleb said. She looked at the man, then at Caleb. It's fine. Damien was just leaving. Damien. So that was his name. We're not done talking, Damien said. Yes, we are. Vivian, leave. Damien's face flushed red. He glanced at Caleb, clearly weighing his options. Then he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We'll talk later, he said to Vivian. Then to Caleb, you might want to be careful who you involve yourself with. He walked back to the SUV and drove off, tires squealing slightly. Vivian exhaled and leaned against the door frame. Ex-boyfriend? Caleb asked. Something like that. You always show up uninvited? More often than I'd like. Caleb waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. You okay? He asked. Yeah, thanks for that. Anytime. She smiled, but it was strained. You should get back to your roof. Right. He turned to leave, but she called after him. Caleb? He looked back. Be careful around him. Damien doesn't like losing things he thinks he owns. Good thing you're not a thing. Vivian's smile turned real. No, I'm not. Ostrad. That weekend, Lily actually helped. Really helped. She held the ladder while Caleb cleaned out the gutters. She painted the porch railings white while he replaced the rotten boards underneath. She even laughed when he accidentally stepped in the paint tray and left a footprint on the driveway. It was the first time in months Caleb had heard her laugh. That night, they sat on the porch eating pizza straight from the box. The house still had a long way to go, but the porch looked good. Solid. Like it might actually hold up. It's better, Lily said quietly. Yeah? Yeah, Caleb smiled. We're getting there. Lily picked at a piece of pepperoni. Dad? Yeah? Are you going to leave again? The question hit him like a punch. He set down his slice and turned to look at her. No. You said that before. I know. But I mean it this time. How do I know? Caleb thought about that. How could he prove it? Words were just words. He'd already used up all his credibility. You don't, he said finally. You just have to wait and see. Lily looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded and went back to her pizza. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The following Monday, Caleb got a call from a contractor in Austin. The same job he'd been eyeing weeks ago. $75 an hour. 6 months, guaranteed. We need an answer by Friday, the guy said. You interested or not? Caleb stood in the kitchen, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The job would solve everything: money problems, debt. He could hire someone to finish the house while he was gone, but he'd be gone. Can I think about it? Caleb asked. Sure, but don't wait too long. We've got other guys lined up. Caleb hung up and stood there in the silence. Across the street, Vivian was out front again, this time trimming hedges. She waved. He waved back. Lily was upstairs, humming to herself. He could hear her through the floorboards. For the first time in years, he had something that felt like a life, and someone was offering him money to walk away from it. That evening, Vivian came over with a toolbox. I noticed your porch light's out, she said. Yeah, I've been meaning to fix that. Want help? Caleb raised an eyebrow. You know how to wire a light fixture? I know how to follow directions on YouTube, he laughed. All right, come on. They worked together in the fading daylight, Vivian holding the fixture while Caleb connected the wires. Lily watched from the window, her face pressed against the glass. She's watching us, Vivian said. She does that. Think she approves? Hard to tell with her. Vivian smiled. She's protective, that's good. Of who? Me or you? Both, probably. They finished the wiring and flipped the switch. The light came on bright and steady. There we go, Caleb said. Thanks. You're welcome. They stood there for a moment, neither of them moving. The porch light cast a warm glow over everything, making the house look almost welcoming. Can I ask you something? Caleb said. Sure. Why are you really helping me? Vivian considered the question. Because I see what you're trying to do, and I think it matters. It's just a house. No, Vivian said quietly. It's not. Caleb wanted to ask what she meant, but Lily opened the front door. Dad, the TV's not working. Did you check the batteries in the remote? Yes, Caleb sighed. I'll be right there. Vivian picked up her toolbox. I should go anyway. Thanks again. Anytime. She walked back across the street and Caleb watched her go, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. By the end of the second week, the house was starting to look like a house. The porch was done. The roof was patched. The kitchen faucet no longer dripped. Caleb had even managed to get the upstairs bathroom functional enough that Lily stopped complaining about it. But the job offer was still sitting in his phone, unanswered. Friday came. The deadline. Caleb stood in the driveway, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the call button. $75 an hour. 6 months. Enough to pay off his credit cards and still have money left over. All he had to do was say yes. He looked at the house, then across the street at Vivian's place, then up at Lily's window, where she was reading a book in the fading afternoon light. Caleb pressed the button. The contractor answered on the second ring. Hunter, you got an answer for me? Caleb took a breath. Yeah, he said. I'm out. There was a pause. You serious? Yeah. You're lost, man. Good luck finding something that pays this well. The line went dead. Caleb stood there for a moment, heart pounding. He'd just turned down more money than he'd ever made in his life, and he felt lighter than he had in years. He went inside. Lily was in the kitchen, making herself a sandwich. Hey, he said. How would you feel about staying here? Long term? She looked up at him, cautious. Like not moving again? Yeah, like making this home. Lily set down the knife. Really? Really. She studied his face, searching for the lie. When she didn't find one, something in her expression shifted. Not quite trust, but close. Okay, she said quietly. Caleb smiled. Okay. That night, he sat on the porch with a beer, staring up at the stars. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he wasn't thinking about the next job, the next city, the next place he needed to be. He was exactly where he needed to be. Across the street, Vivian's porch light flicked on. She stepped outside, saw him sitting there, and raised a hand. He raised his beer in response. She smiled. And in that moment, Caleb Hunter, the man who never stayed, realized he wasn't running anymore. The morning after he turned down the Austin job, Caleb woke up to the sound of hammering. He stumbled downstairs in his boxers and a t-shirt, squinting against the sunlight pouring through the windows. The hammering was coming from outside. He opened the front door and found Vivian on his porch, kneeling beside a 2x4, nail gun in hand. Morning, she said, Not looking up. Caleb rubbed his eyes. What are you doing? Your steps are uneven. I'm fixing them. At 7 in the morning? I'm an early riser. He stood there, barefoot on the threshold, trying to process this. Vivian wore work gloves and had her hair tied back in a bandana. She looked completely at ease, like she did this every day. You know how to use a nail gun, he said. I know how to do a lot of things. Where'd you even get that? I own it. Caleb descended the steps carefully, avoiding the board she was working on. Why do you own a nail gun? Why wouldn't I? Most people don't. Vivian set down the gun and looked up at him. I'm not most people. There was a challenge in her eyes. Not hostile, just direct. Like she was daring him to ask the real question. Who are you? Caleb asked. I told you, Vivian Cole. That's a name, not an answer. She smiled and went back to work. Maybe you should make some coffee and we can talk about it. Caleb went inside, put on pants, and started the coffee maker. Through the window, he watched Vivian finish the step and move on to the next one. Her movements were efficient, practiced. This wasn't someone who'd watched a YouTube video. This was someone who knew what they were doing. When the coffee was ready, he brought out 2 mugs. Vivian had finished the last step and was inspecting her work, testing each board with her weight. Here, Caleb said, handing her a mug. Thanks. They sat on the porch, drinking coffee in the cool morning air. Across the street, a neighbor was walking their dog. Birds were singing in the trees. It was the kind of quiet that used to make Caleb restless. Now it just felt peaceful. So, he said, you gonna tell me why a woman who does investments owns a nail gun? Vivian took a sip of coffee. I used to build houses. Used to? Long time ago, before I got into other things. What kind of other things? The kind that make more money. Caleb waited. Vivian stared out at the street, her expression unreadable. I grew up poor, she said finally. Really poor. My dad worked construction his whole life and died with nothing. I swore I'd never end up like that. So you got into investing. I got into a lot of things. Real estate first, then tech, made some good bets early, made better ones later. She shrugged. Now I have more money than I know what to do with. Must be nice. It's something. The way she said it made Caleb glance at her. There was no satisfaction in her voice, no pride, just a flatness that suggested money hadn't fixed whatever she thought it would. Why are you here? He asked. In Clover Ridge, I mean. This doesn't seem like the kind of place someone with money lives. It's quiet. It's boring. Same thing. Caleb drank his coffee. What about Damien? Vivian's jaw tightened. What about him? He seemed pretty convinced you 2 weren't done. Damien's convinced of a lot of things that aren't true. Like what? Like that he owns me. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Caleb didn't push. He'd learned a long time ago that some people needed space to talk and some needed silence. Vivian seemed like the silence type. But then she kept going. We were engaged, she said, 3 years ago. He worked for one of my companies. Charming, ambitious, good-looking, all the things I thought I wanted. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Turns out he wanted my money more than he wanted me. When I figured that out, I ended it. He didn't take it well. How not well? He showed up at my office every day for a month, called me 50 times a day, sent flowers, sent letters, sent his friends to convince me I was making a mistake. She paused. Then he got mean. Caleb felt something cold settle in his chest. How mean? Threatened to sue me, threatened to ruin my reputation, told everyone who'd listened that I was unstable, that I'd used him. Vivian set down her mug. I had to get a restraining order. It didn't stop him, just made him more careful. And now he's here. He found out where I moved. I don't know how, but he did. She looked at Caleb. So yeah, he shows up sometimes, tries to talk to me, tries to convince me we belong together. It's exhausting. You should call the cops. And say what? He hasn't done anything illegal. He just knocks on my door and talks. They can't arrest him for that. Caleb wanted to argue, but she was right. The law didn't work that way. Well, he said, if he shows up again, let me know. Vivian smiled faintly. You gonna fight him for me? If I have to. She studied him for a moment, and Caleb had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing right through him again. seeing all the ways he'd failed before, all the ways he might fail again. "You're a good man, Caleb Hunter," she said quietly. "Don't know about that." "I do." Before he could respond, Lily's voice called from inside the house. "Dad, where's the cereal?" Caleb stood up. "Duty calls. Go. I'll clean up out here." "You don't have to." "I know." He went inside, leaving Vivian on the porch with the sunrise and the tools and a past she clearly hadn't outrun yet. Over breakfast, Lily asked the question he'd been dreading. "Who's that lady?" "Vivian, our neighbor." "I know her name." "Who is she?" Caleb poured milk over his cereal. "Just a friend." "Mom said you don't have friends." "Well, Mom's wrong about a lot of things." Lily stirred her cereal, watching him. "Do you like her?" "She's nice." "That's not what I asked." Caleb sighed. "Eat your breakfast." "You do like her." "Lily, it's okay if you do. I'm not a baby." She said it with the kind of seriousness only a 9-year-old could muster, like she was giving him permission. Caleb didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Thanks," he said. "But there's nothing going on. Yet." "Eat." Lily grinned and went back to her cereal. Caleb shook his head and tried not to think about the fact that his daughter had just read him better than he'd read himself. The next few days blurred together in a haze of work. Caleb tackled the interior, stripping wallpaper, patching holes, repainting room by room. Lily helped where she could, mostly just handing him things or keeping him company. She talked more now. Not a lot, but more. She told him about school in her old town, about her best friend Emma, who'd moved away last year, about the teacher who let her stay inside during recess because she hated dodgeball. Caleb listened and tried not to show how much it hurt that he was learning all this now, that he'd missed so much. "Do you think I'll make friends here?" Lily asked one afternoon. They were painting her bedroom a soft blue she'd picked out herself. "Yeah, you're smart, you're funny. Kids will like you. What if they don't?" "Then they're idiots." Lily smiled. "You're not supposed to call kids idiots." "I didn't. I said they would be, hypothetically." "That's the same thing. Totally different." She threw a paint-soaked rag at him. He dodged, laughing, and flicked paint back at her. It landed on her nose. She shrieked and chased him around the room, both of them laughing so hard they could barely breathe. When they finally stopped, covered in blue paint and gasping for air, Lily looked at him with something he hadn't seen in years. Joy. "I miss this," she said quietly. Caleb's throat tightened. "Me too. Don't leave again." "I won't." "Promise?" He wanted to say the words and make them true by sheer force of will, but promises didn't mean anything if you broke them, and he'd broken too many. "I'm going to try," he said. "That's all I can promise." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay." It wasn't enough, but it was honest, and maybe that mattered more. That evening, Vivian came over with takeout, Chinese food in white boxes that smelled incredible. "You didn't have to do this," Caleb said. "I know, but I did anyway." They ate on the porch, Lily between them, all three of them using chopsticks. Lily struggled with hers and eventually gave up, stabbing her orange chicken with a fork instead. "So," Vivian said, "how's the house coming?" "Good. Almost done with the bedrooms. What's next?" "Living room? Maybe the basement, if I'm feeling ambitious." "You should feel ambitious," Caleb smiled. "Why's that?" "Because you're good at this. Better than you think." He didn't know what to say to that. Compliments always made him uncomfortable, especially ones that felt true. Lily looked between them, then announced, "I'm going to go watch TV." "Don't watch anything scary," Caleb said. "I won't." She went inside, leaving them alone. Vivian sipped her tea, looking out at the street. "She's warming up to you," Vivian said. "Yeah, slowly. That's how trust works. Slowly." Caleb picked at his fried rice. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you care? About us, I mean. You don't owe us anything." Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. "When I was a kid, my mom left. Just walked out one day and never came back. My dad tried. He really did, but he was always working, always gone. And when he was home, he was too tired to be there, you know?" She paused. "I spent a lot of time alone, wishing someone would just see me, see that I needed help."
And no one did. No, they didn't. She looked at him. But you're here, you're trying, and Lily's lucky to have that. Even if she doesn't know it yet, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. You're doing more than you think. Caleb wanted to believe that, wanted to believe he wasn't screwing this up the way he'd screwed up everything else. Thank you, he said. For the food, for the help, for all of it. Vivian smiled. You're welcome. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing. A car drove by. Life moved on, slow and steady. For the first time in years, Caleb felt like he was part of it. The next morning, Damien came back. Caleb was in the garage sorting through old tools his father had left behind when he heard the SUV pull up. He stepped outside and saw Damien getting out, straightening his suit jacket like he was about to walk into a boardroom. Vivian's car was in her driveway. She was home. Caleb crossed the street before Damien could knock. Can I help you? Caleb said. Damien turned, his expression shifting from irritation to cold amusement. You again. Me again. This doesn't concern you. Vivian's my friend, so yeah, it does. Damien smiled, but it was the kind of smile a shark gives right before it bites. Friend, that's cute. How long have you known her? 2 weeks? 3? Long enough. Let me give you some advice, friend to friend. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. Vivian likes projects, broken things she can fix, makes her feel useful, but once you're fixed or once she gets bored, she moves on, so don't get too attached. Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Damien's smile vanished. You don't know what you're talking about. Neither do you. I know her better than you ever will. Then why isn't she answering your calls? The words hit their mark. Damien's jaw clenched. For a second, Caleb thought he might actually throw a punch. But then the front door opened. Vivian stood on the threshold, arms crossed. Damien, leave. We need to talk. No, we don't. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I don't care if you're asking for 5 seconds. The answer is no. Damien's hands curled into fists. You can't keep avoiding me. Watch me. Vivian, if you show up here again, I'm calling my lawyer, and this time I'll make sure the restraining order actually sticks. Damien stared at her, his face flushing red. Then he turned to Caleb. This isn't over. Yeah, Caleb said. It is. Damien got back in his SUV and peeled out, tires screeching. Caleb watched him go, adrenaline still buzzing in his veins. You okay? He asked Vivian. Yeah, she exhaled slowly. Thanks. He's not going to stop, is he? Probably not. Then we need to do something about it. Vivian looked at him, surprised. We? Yeah, we. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Okay, we. That night Caleb couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Damien's face, the anger, the entitlement, the way he looked at Vivian like she was something he'd lost and was determined to get back. Caleb had seen guys like that before, on job sites, in bars. They never stopped until someone made them. He got up, went downstairs, and found Lily asleep on the couch with the TV still on. Some cartoon he didn't recognize. He turned it off, draped a blanket over her, and stood there for a moment watching her breathe. She was so small, so fragile, and he'd do anything to keep her safe. The same went for Vivian, he realized. Somewhere in the past few weeks, she'd gone from a neighbor to something more. Not romance, not yet, but something. Someone he cared about, someone he'd protect. The next day, Vivian showed up with a proposal. I need a favor, she said. They were standing in Caleb's driveway. He'd just finished replacing the mailbox, which had been leaning at a 45-degree angle since he'd arrived. What kind of favor? I'm hosting a charity event in 6 weeks, big fundraiser for the community center. Dinner, auction, the whole thing. She hesitated. The venue I booked just fell through, construction delays. Caleb wiped his hands on his jeans. And you need a new venue. I need a miracle. This event raises most of the center's operating budget for the year. If it doesn't happen, they'll have to cut programs, kids' programs. What about another hotel? Conference center? Everything's booked. It's peak wedding season. Caleb thought about it. What kind of space are you looking for? Something that can hold 200 people, decent lighting, kitchen access for catering.
That's specific. I know. Which is why I'm screwed. Caleb looked past her down the road toward the edge of town. There was an old barn out there. Massive thing. Used to belong to the Hendersons before they sold their farm and moved to Florida. He'd driven past it a few times. The structure looked solid, even if the aesthetics were rough. What if I told you I might have an idea? He said. Vivian's eyes lit up. I'm listening. They drove out to the barn that afternoon. It sat on 5 acres of overgrown grass, the paint peeling, the doors hanging crooked on their hinges. But when Caleb stepped inside, he saw potential. The bones were good, high ceilings, open floor plan, windows on 3 sides that let in natural light. It smelled like hay and rust, but that could be fixed. This is a barn, Vivian said. It's a blank canvas. It's falling apart. So was my house. Now look at it. Vivian walked the perimeter, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. Caleb could see her mind working, running calculations. How much would it cost to make this usable? She asked. Depends on what you want. Tables, chairs, lights, decorations. Make it look like something people would want to spend money in. Caleb did the math in his head. Materials. Labor. Time. A lot, he said honestly, and we'd have to move fast. How fast? 6 weeks? We'd be working 16-hour days, maybe more. Vivian turned to face him. Could you do it? Alone? No. With help? Maybe. I can get help. Money's not the issue. Caleb believed her, but this wasn't about money. This was about whether he could pull off something this big, this fast, without screwing it up. I'll need a crew, he said. At least 3 guys who know what they're doing. I'll make calls. And permits. We'll need permits. I'll handle it. Caleb looked around the barn again, seeing it not as it was, but as it could be. Polished floors, string lights, tables draped in white cloth. It could work, if they didn't screw it up. All right, he said. Let's do it. Vivian smiled. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's done. They shook on it, and Caleb felt the weight of the promise settle onto his shoulders. This was bigger than fixing a porch, bigger than painting a bedroom. This was something that mattered, and he couldn't afford to fail. The next morning, Vivian showed up with a crew. 4 guys, all in their 40s, all with the kind of weathered hands that told you they'd been doing this work their whole lives. She introduced them one by one. This is Marco. He does electrical. Marco nodded, short, stocky, arms covered in tattoos. This is Tony, plumbing and HVAC. Tony grunted. Tall, bald, perpetual scowl. This is James, carpentry. James tipped an imaginary hat, lean, graying, easygoing smile. And this is Roger. He does everything else. Roger waved. Older than the rest, probably 60, with a white beard and kind eyes. Vivian says you're running this show, Marco said to Caleb. That's the plan. You done this kind of thing before? Built plenty of things. Never a barn. Marco grinned. First time for everything. They got to work. The first week was brutal. Clearing out debris, fixing the foundation, replacing rotted beams. Caleb worked alongside them, matching them hour for hour, and by the end of each day he was so exhausted he could barely stand. But it felt good, real, like he was building something that mattered. Lily came by after school most days, sitting on an overturned bucket and doing her homework while they worked. Sometimes Vivian came too, bringing food and drinks and encouragement. You're making progress, she said one evening, standing in the middle of the barn and looking around. Slow progress. Still progress? Caleb wiped sweat from his forehead. You really think we can pull this off? I know we can. Her confidence was infectious. Caleb found himself believing it too, but then, 3 weeks in, they hit a snag. The electrical panel was shot, completely fried. Replacing it would cost thousands of dollars they didn't have budgeted. We could use a temporary setup, Marco suggested. Generators, extension cords. For 200 people? Caleb shook his head. That's a fire hazard. Then we need a new panel. Caleb ran the numbers. Even with Vivian covering costs, this would blow the budget. And if they went over, there'd be no money left for decorations, for furniture, for all the things that would actually make this place look good. He called Vivian that night. We have a problem, he said. She listened while he explained. When he finished, there was a long silence. "How much do we need?" she asked.
10 grand, maybe 12. Done. Vivian, I said it's done. I'll transfer the money tomorrow. That's a lot. It's worth it. Caleb wanted to argue, but the relief was too strong. Thank you. Stop thanking me. Just finish the barn.
He hung up and stood there in the quiet of his kitchen, staring at the phone. Vivian had just dropped $12,000 without blinking. Like it was nothing, because to her, it probably was. The realization made him uncomfortable, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented. The gap between them, the difference in their lives. But then he thought about the way she looked at him. Not like someone beneath her, not like a project, like an equal. Maybe the money didn't matter as much as he thought. By week 4, the barn was starting to take shape. The electrical was fixed. The floor was sanded and polished. The walls were painted a clean white. It was still rough around the edges, but it was getting there. Caleb stood in the center one evening after everyone had left, taking it all in. The space felt bigger now, brighter, like something good could happen here. "Looks amazing." He turned. Vivian stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the setting sun. "It's getting there," Caleb said. She walked over to him, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. "You did this. We did this. No, you. I just wrote checks. You made it real." Caleb shook his head. "I couldn't have done it without the crew. Without you." "Maybe, but you're the one who saw what this could be." She looked around. "I just saw a broken barn. You saw possibility." They stood side by side, not touching, just being. The light was fading outside, turning everything soft and golden. "Can I tell you something?" Vivian said. "Yeah." "I haven't felt this hopeful in years." Caleb looked at her. "About the event?" "About everything." There was something raw in her voice, vulnerable, like she was admitting something she'd kept locked away for too long. "Me too," Caleb said quietly. Vivian smiled. And for a moment, standing there in that half-finished barn, Caleb felt like maybe he'd found something he'd been looking for his whole life. Not a place, not a job, just a reason to stay. The call came at 2 a.m. Caleb jerked awake, heart pounding, fumbling for his phone in the dark. The screen was too bright. He squinted at the name. Vivian. "Hello?" His voice was rough with sleep. "Caleb." She sounded breathless, scared. "I'm sorry to wake you, but what's wrong?" "Damien's outside my house. He's been out there for an hour, just sitting in his car, watching." Caleb was already out of bed, pulling on jeans. "Did you call the police?" "They came. Talked to him. Said he's parked on a public street, so there's nothing they can do unless he actually does something. I'm coming over. You don't have to I'm already halfway there." He hung up, grabbed a shirt, and headed downstairs. Lily was asleep on the couch again, some documentary about ocean animals playing quietly on the TV. He left her a note on the counter, just in case, then slipped out the front door. The street was dark and silent. And there, parked 3 houses down from Vivian's, was the black SUV. Caleb could see Damien's silhouette in the driver's seat, lit by the glow of his phone. Caleb crossed the street and walked straight to Vivian's door. She opened it before he could knock, her face pale in the porch light. "He's still there," she whispered. "I see him. What are you going to do?" "Talk to him." "Caleb, stay inside." He walked down her driveway and across the street toward the SUV. Damien saw him coming and rolled down the window, that same cold smile on his face. "Can't sleep?" Damien asked. "You need to leave." "I'm not doing anything illegal, just sitting here." "You're harassing her." "I'm parked on a public street. Last I checked, that's not a crime." Caleb leaned down, resting his forearms on the window frame. "Let me explain something to you. You can play whatever legal games you want. Park wherever you want. But if you keep this up, if you keep showing up and scaring her, eventually you're going to cross a line. And when you do, I'll be there." Damien's smile widened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. You think you scare me? You're a broke construction worker living in a dump. I could buy your entire life with pocket change. Then go buy someone else's, because Vivian's not for sale." Damien's expression darkened. "You don't know her. You don't know what we had." "Had. Past tense. She'll come back. She always does." "No," Caleb said quietly. "She won't." For a moment, something flickered across Damien's face. Not anger, something worse, desperation. The look of a man who'd lost the one thing he couldn't buy back. Then it was gone, replaced by that smooth, controlled mask. "We'll see," Damien said. He started the engine and pulled away slowly, deliberately, like he wanted Caleb to know he was leaving on his own terms. Caleb stood in the street and watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then he turned and walked back to Vivian's house. She was standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. "Thank you," she said. "He'll be back." "I know." Caleb climbed the porch steps. "You can't keep living like this." "What choice do I have? Get better security, cameras, an alarm system." "I have all that. It doesn't stop him from sitting outside." Caleb wanted to fix this, wanted to find some solution that would make Damien disappear. But there wasn't one. Not without things getting messy. "Do you have somewhere else you can stay?" he asked. "Just for a few days until he cools off." Vivian shook her head. "I'm not running from him. I did that once. Moved across the country to get away. And he still found me." "Then what?" "I don't know." She looked exhausted. "I just don't know." They stood there in the quiet, the night pressing in around them. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car passed. Normal sounds. Normal night, but nothing felt normal. "Stay at my place," Caleb said. Vivian blinked. "What?" "Just for tonight. The couch is uncomfortable as hell, but it's better than being here alone." "Caleb, I can't." "Yes, you can. Grab whatever you need. 5 minutes." She hesitated, then nodded and went inside. Caleb waited on the porch, scanning the street for any sign of the SUV, but it was gone. For now. Vivian came back with an overnight bag. They walked across the street together, Caleb keeping himself between her and the road, just in case. Inside, the house was quiet. Lily was still asleep. Caleb grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and handed it to Vivian. "Bathroom's upstairs if you need it. Kitchen's there if you get hungry. Help yourself to whatever." "Thank you," Vivian said softly. "Don't mention it." He started to head upstairs, but she caught his arm. "Caleb?" He turned. "I mean it. Thank you. For all of this. For caring." "Of course I care." "Most people wouldn't." "Then most people are idiots." She smiled, but it was sad, tired. "Good night." "Good night." He went upstairs and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Downstairs, he could hear Vivian moving around quietly, settling in. The house felt different with her in it. Fuller, somehow. He thought about Damien's face, the entitlement, the refusal to let go. And he thought about Vivian, who'd spent years building a life for herself, only to have someone try to tear it down because they couldn't handle losing. Caleb had been that guy once. Not the controlling type, but the kind who made promises and broke them. Who let people down because he was always chasing the next thing. He wouldn't be that guy anymore. Whatever it took. Morning came too fast. Caleb woke to the smell of coffee and stumbled downstairs to find Vivian in the kitchen, already dressed, pouring 3 mugs. "You didn't have to make breakfast," he said. "I didn't, just coffee." She handed him a mug. "But I figured you could use it. You're not wrong." Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw Vivian. "Why is she here?" Lily asked. "She needed a place to stay for the night," Caleb said. "Why?" "Grown-up stuff." Lily gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it, but she didn't push. She took the 3rd mug of coffee, which Vivian had apparently made with way too much cream and sugar, and sat at the counter. "Are you going to stay again tonight?" Lily asked Vivian. "I don't know yet." "You should. It's weird being the only girl here." Vivian smiled. "I'll think about it." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, and Caleb realized this was the first time in years he'd had breakfast with 2 people he actually wanted to be around. It felt normal, easy, like a family. The thought scared him more than Damien ever could. Later that morning, Caleb headed to the barn with the crew. They were in the final stretch now, less than 2 weeks until the event, and the pressure was mounting. Every detail had to be perfect, every measurement exact. James was installing the last of the light fixtures when Caleb arrived. Marco was running wire through the ceiling. Tony was outside, hooking up the temporary water line for the bathrooms. "Looking good," Roger said, walking over with a clipboard. We're ahead of schedule. For now. Furniture arrives tomorrow. Decorations the day after. Caleb nodded, running through the mental checklist. Tables, chairs, linens, centerpieces, sound system, kitchen setup for the caterers. It was all coming together, but there were still 1,000 things that could go wrong. You all right, boss? Roger asked. Yeah, just thinking. About the barn or about that lady across the street? Caleb shot him a look. How do you know about Vivian? Roger grinned. Small town, people talk. Great. For what it's worth, she seems good for you. We're just friends. Sure you are. Roger walked off, chuckling, and Caleb went back to work, trying not to think about how transparent he apparently was. By midday, the heat was brutal. Caleb sent the crew on break and stepped outside for some air. That's when he saw the SUV. Damien was parked at the edge of the property, just sitting there, watching. Caleb's jaw tightened. He walked over slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. Damien rolled down the window as he approached. This is private property, Caleb said. I'm on the road. You're 30 feet past the road. Damien shrugged. Guess I misjudged. What do you want? Just curious what you're building out here. Heard it's for Vivian's little charity thing. It's none of your business. Everything about Vivian is my business. No, Caleb said. It's not. Damien leaned back in his seat, studying Caleb with that same cold amusement. You really think this is going to last? You and her? I think you need to move on. She told you about me, didn't she? About us. She told me enough. Did she tell you I proposed to her on a yacht in Monaco, that I gave her a ring worth more than this entire barn? Damien smiled. Did she tell you she said yes? And then she changed her mind. That's what matters. People change their minds all the time. They change them back too. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me very carefully. Vivian doesn't want you. She's made that clear. So you can keep showing up and making a fool of yourself, or you can accept reality and leave her alone. Your choice. Damien's smile faded. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty. This isn't one of them. We'll see. Damien started the engine and backed out slowly, never breaking eye contact. Caleb watched him go, fists clenched, adrenaline surging through his veins. When he turned around, Marco was standing in the barn doorway. That the ex? Marco asked. Yeah. He always this charming? Pretty much. Marco spit on the ground. Want me to flatten his tires next time he shows up? Caleb almost laughed. Tempting, but no. Offer stands. They went back to work, but Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that things were escalating. Damien wasn't going to stop, and eventually someone was going to get hurt. That evening, Vivian came by the barn to check on progress. Caleb hadn't told her about Damien's visit, and he wasn't planning to. She had enough to worry about. It's beautiful, she said, walking through the space. The floors gleamed, the walls were pristine. String lights hung from the ceiling, not yet turned on, but Caleb could already picture how they'd look. We're getting there. Getting there? Caleb, this is incredible. Wait till you see it with the furniture. Vivian turned to him, her expression serious. I need to tell you something. Okay. I got a call this afternoon from the community center director. She said someone's been calling donors, telling them not to come to the event. Caleb's stomach dropped. Damien, I don't have proof. But who else would it be? How many donors? 3 so far. All major ones. Did they pull out? Not yet. But if he keeps this up... She trailed off, shaking her head. This event is everything. If it fails, the center loses funding. Kids lose programs. It's not just about me. Caleb wanted to hit something, preferably Damien's face. But violence wouldn't fix this. It would just make things worse. We'll figure it out, he said. How? I don't know yet, but we will. Vivian looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked scared, really scared. What if we can't? She whispered. Caleb took her hand. It was an impulse, something he did without thinking. But when she didn't pull away, he kept holding on. We will, he said firmly. I promise. It was the kind of promise he'd made before and broken. But this time felt different. This time, he meant it down to his bones. Vivian squeezed his hand. Okay. They stood there in the empty barn, the silence stretching between them, and Caleb realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about the event anymore. It wasn't even just about stopping Damien. It was about proving to Vivian that she could trust him, that he wouldn't let her down, and maybe proving it to himself too. The furniture arrived the next day. 50 round tables, 200 chairs. All of it had to be unloaded, assembled, and arranged. Caleb and the crew worked until midnight, muscles screaming, backs aching. Lily came by after school and helped where she could, folding napkins and setting them in neat piles. Vivian worked alongside them, directing placement, adjusting angles, making sure everything was perfect. By the time they finished, the barn didn't look like a barn anymore. It looked like a venue, a real one. "It's perfect," Vivian breathed. Caleb looked around, seeing it through fresh eyes. She was right. It was perfect. "We still have a week," he said. "Decorations, final touches." "I know, but we did it. We actually did it." Lily tugged on Caleb's sleeve. "Dad, can we go home? I'm tired." "Yeah, kiddo, let's go." They said goodnight to Vivian and the crew and drove back through the dark. Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window. Caleb glanced at her and felt something loosen in his chest. She trusted him enough to fall asleep. Such a small thing, but it meant everything. At home, he carried her inside and tucked her into bed. She stirred slightly, mumbling something he couldn't make out, then went still again. Caleb stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her. Then he went downstairs and collapsed on the couch. His phone buzzed, a text from Vivian. "Thank you for today. For everything. I don't know how to repay you," he typed back. "You don't have to." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "I want to." Caleb stared at the screen, trying to figure out what to say. Before he could respond, another message came through. "Dinner? Tomorrow night? My place?" He hesitated. This felt like a line they were about to cross. Once they crossed it, there was no going back. But maybe that was the point. "Sounds good," he typed. 7 o'clock? I'll be there." He set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. His heart was pounding, not from fear, from something else, hope, maybe, or just the terrifying possibility that this might actually work out. The next evening, Caleb stood in front of his closet, trying to figure out what to wear. Everything he owned was either work clothes or workout clothes. Nothing that said dinner at a billionaire's house. "Just wear the blue shirt," Lily called from her room. "How do you even know what I'm doing?" "Because you've been standing there for 10 minutes. The blue shirt looks nice. Trust me." He pulled out the blue shirt. She was right. It did look nice. "Thanks, kid." "You're welcome. Are you going to kiss her?" Caleb nearly dropped the hanger. "What? Vivian, are you going to kiss her?" "That's none of your business." "So, yes. I didn't say that. You didn't say no." Caleb sighed. "Do your homework." Lily giggled. He could hear it through the wall. At 7 sharp, he knocked on Vivian's door. She answered wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair down, no makeup. She looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "Come in," she said. The inside of her house was nothing like he expected. He'd imagined something sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. But it was warm, lived in. Bookshelves lined the walls, plants sat on every surface. There were framed photos of places he didn't recognize, artwork that looked handmade. "You seem surprised," Vivian said. "I guess I am." "What were you expecting?" "I don't know, something colder." She smiled. "I get that a lot." Dinner was simple. Pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread. They ate at her kitchen table, talking about nothing important. The barn, the weather. A documentary Lily had made him watch about jellyfish. It was easy, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Vivian poured wine. Caleb didn't usually drink, but he accepted the glass anyway. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian said. "Sure." "Why'd you really come back to Clover Ridge?" Caleb swirled the wine in his glass. "I told you, nowhere else to go." "That's not the whole truth." She was right. It wasn't. "I was tired," he said finally. "Tired of running. Tired of waking up in places I didn't recognize. Tired of being a stranger to my own kid." He paused. "My ex-wife told me once that I was good at starting things, but terrible at finishing them. And she was right. I'd start a job, get bored, Move on. Start a relationship. Get scared. Bail.
I've been doing that my whole life. And now? Now I'm trying to finish something. For once. Vivian was quiet for a moment. The barn?
The barn. The house.
Lily. He looked at her. You. The word hung in the air between them. Vivian set down her wine glass. Caleb, I know this is complicated. I know I'm not exactly a catch. I'm broke. I've got baggage. I've screwed up more times than I can count. He leaned forward. But I care about you, and I'm not going anywhere. Vivian's eyes were bright. She reached across the space between them and took his hand. I care about you too, she said quietly. Yeah? Yeah.
They sat there, hands clasped, not saying anything. And then Vivian leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, like she was testing the waters. Caleb kissed her back, slow and careful, and for a moment the rest of the world disappeared. No Damien, no past mistakes, no uncertainty about the future, just this. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian was smiling. I've wanted to do that for weeks, she admitted. Me too. Why didn't you? Didn't think I had the right. You do. They kissed again, and this time it was deeper, more sure. Caleb felt something shift inside him, like a door he'd kept locked for years finally opening. This was real. This mattered, and he wasn't going to screw it up. Later, walking back across the street to his own house, Caleb felt lighter than he had in years. The stars were out, the air was cool, everything felt possible. He unlocked his front door and found Lily waiting on the stairs. So? She asked. So what? Did you kiss her? Caleb smiled. Go to bed, kid. You totally did. Good night, Lily. She grinned and ran upstairs, and Caleb stood alone in the hallway, shaking his head. But he was smiling too. The week passed in a blur, final touches on the barn, decorations going up, the sound system being tested, everything was falling into place. And then, 3 days before the event, Damien made his move. Caleb was at the barn when Vivian called, her voice shaking. He filed a lawsuit. Caleb's blood went cold. For what? Breach of contract. He's claiming I owe him money from a business deal we were partners on. It's complete fiction, but he filed it anyway. Can he do that? He just did, and he timed it perfectly. The hearing is scheduled for the day of the event. Caleb felt rage surge through him. That bastard. If I don't show up, he gets a default judgment. If I do show up, I miss the event. He's trying to force your hand. It's working. Caleb paced the barn, trying to think. There had to be a way out of this, some loophole, some solution. Can you get a continuance? He asked. My lawyer's trying, but it's not guaranteed. Then we prepare for both. You go to the hearing. I'll run the event. Caleb, you can't. Yes, I can. I've been working on this for weeks. I know every detail. I can handle it. Vivian was silent for a long moment. What if something goes wrong? Then I'll fix it. You're sure? I'm sure. Another pause, then quietly, okay. We're not letting him win, Caleb said. Not this time. No, Vivian agreed. We're not. They hung up, and Caleb stood in the middle of the barn, surrounded by everything they'd built, and made a silent vow. Damien wanted a fight? He was about to get one. The morning of the event arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Caleb stood in the barn at 5 a.m., running through the checklist for the 100th time. Tables arranged in perfect circles, chairs positioned exactly, centerpieces in place, each one identical to the last. The string lights overhead glowed warm against the early darkness, turning the whole space into something that looked almost magical. But his stomach was in knots. Vivian's hearing was scheduled for 9. She'd left an hour ago, dressed in a suit that made her look like she was going into battle. Which, in a way, she was. You got this, boss, Roger said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee. Everything's ready. The caterers are late. They're not late. They're not supposed to be here until 6. Caleb checked his watch. 5:12. Right. You need to breathe. I'm breathing. You're spiraling. Roger wasn't wrong. Caleb's mind was running through every possible disaster. The food would be wrong. The sound system would fail. A table would collapse. Something would catch fire. Damien would show up and ruin everything. That last one felt most likely. What if he comes here? Caleb asked. Then we deal with it. How? Roger sipped his coffee. Marco's got a tire iron in his truck. I'm just saying. Despite everything, Caleb almost smiled. We're not assaulting anyone. Speak for yourself. The caterers arrived at 6 on the dot, 3 vans full of food and equipment. Caleb helped them unload, directing them to the kitchen area the crew had set up in the back. By 7, the smell of cooking food filled the barn. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, something with garlic that made his mouth water even though his stomach was too tight to eat. Lily showed up at 7:30, brought by Vivian's assistant, a sharp woman named Maria who'd been handling the guest list and RSVPs. Lily was wearing a dress, which was rare enough that Caleb did a double take. You look nice, he said. I look weird. You look great. She tugged at the hem, uncomfortable. Is Vivian here yet? No, she's at the courthouse. Is she going to make it back in time? I hope so. Lily studied his face. You're worried. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Maria appeared, clipboard in hand. Caleb, we need to talk about the seating chart. 3 people called this morning to change their table assignments. Can you handle it? I can, but I need your approval. Whatever you think is best. Maria gave him a look that said she'd expected more input, but she nodded and walked off. Caleb turned back to the barn, watching the crew make final adjustments. James was testing the microphone at the podium. Tony was adjusting the thermostat. Marco was outside directing cars to the overflow parking area. Everything was running smoothly. So why did Caleb feel like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop? At 8:15, his phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. Hearing just started. Lawyer says it could go either way. I'll update when I can. Caleb typed back quickly. We're ready here. Don't worry about the event. Just focus on the hearing. 3 dots appeared, then, thank you for everything. He pocketed the phone and tried to ignore the tightness in his chest. Guests started arriving at 8:30. A trickle at first, then a steady stream. Well-dressed people in suits and evening gowns looking around the barn with expressions that ranged from curious to impressed. Caleb stood near the entrance, greeting people as they came in, trying to look more confident than he felt. This is incredible, one woman said, her eyes wide. I can't believe this used to be a barn. Thank you. Where's Vivian? I need to congratulate her. She'll be here soon. The woman moved on, and Caleb scanned the crowd for any sign of trouble. So far, everyone seemed legitimate. No unexpected guests, no black SUV in the parking lot. By 9 o'clock, the barn was nearly full. 200 people milling around, drinks in hand, voices creating a low hum of conversation. The auction items were displayed on tables along one wall. Art, vacation packages, signed memorabilia, things that would hopefully bring in enough money to keep the community center running for another year. Maria appeared at Caleb's elbow. We need to start seating people. Dinner's in 30 minutes. Vivian's not here yet. I know, but we can't wait much longer. Caleb checked his phone. No new messages. Give her until 9:15, he said. Then we'll start. Maria nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Caleb felt his phone buzz and grabbed it, hoping for an update. But it wasn't Vivian. It was a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. Then something made him swipe to accept. Hello? Caleb Hunter? A man's voice, smooth, professional. Yeah, who's this? My name is Richard Sampson. I'm an attorney representing Damian Cross. Caleb's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? I'm calling on behalf of my client to offer you an opportunity. I'm not interested. You haven't heard the offer yet. Don't need to. Mr. Cross is willing to drop the lawsuit against Ms. Cole. All charges dismissed. No financial penalty. Caleb's heart stuttered. In exchange for what? You convince Ms. Cole to meet with him. One conversation. That's all he's asking. You're insane. It's a generous offer. It's manipulation. It's a chance to end this without further legal action. Think about it. Ms. Cole could be tied up in court for months, maybe years. All of that goes away if she just agrees to talk to him. Caleb wanted to throw the phone across the barn. Tell your client to go to hell. Mr. Hunter. And tell him if he shows up here tonight, I'll have him arrested for trespassing. He hung up and stood there, shaking with anger. This was Damian's play. Corner Vivian legally, then offer a way out that forced her back into his orbit. It was sick. Dad? He turned.
Lily was standing a few feet away, watching him with concern. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just a work call." "You look mad." "I'm fine."
She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. People are sitting down. Maria says we're starting soon. Okay, thanks. Lily hesitated. Is Vivian gonna make it? I don't know. What if she doesn't? Then we do this without her. Lily nodded and walked back toward the tables. Caleb took a breath and tried to center himself. This event wasn't about Damien. It was about the kids who needed the community center, the programs that would disappear without funding. He couldn't let Damien ruin that. At 9:20, Maria gave the signal. People started moving to their assigned tables, settling in, unfolding napkins. The servers began bringing out the first course: salads, bread, wine. Caleb stood near the back, watching everything unfold. So far, it was going perfectly. The food looked great. The ambiance was exactly what Vivian had envisioned. People were smiling, talking, enjoying themselves. But Vivian's seat at the head table was empty. At 9:40, Caleb's phone buzzed. Heading back now. Hearing went longer than expected. Be there in 20. Relief flooded through him. He typed back quickly. Everything's great here. Drive safe. 20 minutes. He could hold things together for 20 minutes. The first course ended. The servers cleared plates. The second course came out. Chicken. Vegetables. More wine. The noise level in the barn rose as people relaxed, the earlier formality giving way to laughter and conversation. Caleb checked his watch. 10 o'clock. Vivian should be here any minute. Then the lights went out. Not all of them. Just the string lights overhead. The room plunged into semi-darkness, lit only by the candles on each table. Caleb's stomach dropped. He pulled out his phone and used the flashlight to navigate toward the electrical panel. Marco was already there, frowning at the breaker box. What happened? Caleb asked. Don't know. Everything looks fine. Can you fix it? Give me a minute. Caleb turned back to the crowd. People were murmuring, confused but not panicking. Yet, Maria appeared beside him. What's going on? Power issue. Marco's handling it. We need those lights for the auction. I know. Caleb, I know. He walked to the podium and grabbed the microphone. It was still working, powered by a separate battery backup. Folks, we're having a minor technical issue with the lights. Nothing to worry about. We'll have it fixed in just a few minutes. In the meantime, enjoy the ambiance. A few people laughed. Most went back to their conversations, but Caleb could feel the tension building. If the lights didn't come back on soon, the whole carefully planned schedule would fall apart. Marco reappeared, shaking his head. It's not the breaker. Something's wrong with the main line. How long to fix? Could be an hour, maybe more. Caleb felt panic rising. An hour would kill the event. People would leave. The auction would be canceled. Everything they'd worked for would be ruined. There has to be another option, Caleb said. We could run generators, but we'd need to get them here and set them up. That's at least 30 minutes. 30 minutes. They could maybe hold the crowd that long, maybe. Do it, Caleb said. Marco pulled out his phone and started making calls. Caleb went back to the podium. Folks, we're going to need a bit more time with the lights. But don't worry, we've got a great program lined up, and we're not letting a little technical difficulty stop us. He forced a smile. In fact, let's take this opportunity to hear from some of the people whose lives have been changed by the community center. It was a gamble, but Maria caught on immediately and started directing people to the microphone. A teenager came up first, talking about the after-school program that had kept him out of trouble. Then a single mom who'd found job training. Then an older man who'd learned to read through the adult literacy program. Their stories were powerful, raw, real. And as they spoke, the room quieted. People leaned forward, listened. Some had tears in their eyes. Caleb stood in the back and watched, his heart pounding. This was why it mattered. Not the lights, not the decorations. This. At 10:30, the barn doors opened and Vivian walked in. She looked exhausted. Her suit was wrinkled, her hair slightly disheveled. But when she saw the room full of people, saw the testimonials happening at the podium, her face transformed. Caleb met her near the entrance. What happened to the lights? She whispered. Power issue. Marco's working on it. And this? She gestured to the podium, where a young girl was talking about the art classes that had helped her process her parents' divorce. Improvising? Vivian looked at him, and there was something in her expression that made his chest tight. You're incredible. I'm winging it. You're saving this. Before he could respond, Maria appeared. Vivian? Thank goodness. We need to start the auction soon or we'll lose people. How are we doing on time? Vivian asked. Behind. But we can catch up if the lights come back on. As if on cue, Marco burst through the back door, giving a thumbs up. 30 seconds later, the string lights flickered back to life. The crowd applauded. Vivian walked to the podium, taking the microphone from the young girl who'd just finished speaking. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, Vivian said. Her voice was steady, confident, like the hearing and the stress and everything else hadn't touched her. I apologize for my late arrival. I was dealing with some unexpected business. But I'm here now, and I'm so grateful for your patience and your generosity. She launched into her prepared remarks, talking about the community center, the programs it offered, the lives it changed. The crowd listened, rapt. Caleb watched from the back, feeling something settle in his chest. They'd done it, despite everything, despite Damien's attempts to sabotage them, despite the power failure, despite all of it. They'd pulled it off. The auction started at 11. Maria ran it with military precision, calling out items, taking bids, keeping the energy high. A weekend in Napa went for $8,000. A signed guitar from a famous musician went for $12,000. A private dinner with a celebrity chef went for $15,000. The numbers climbed higher and higher. By the time they reached the final item, they'd already raised over $200,000. Caleb stood near Lily, who was watching the auction with wide eyes.
People are crazy, she whispered. They're generous. Same thing. He smiled and pulled her close. She leaned against him, and for a moment everything felt right. Then the barn doors opened again, and Damien walked in. Caleb's entire body went rigid. Damien was alone, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression calm and composed. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on Vivian at the podium. Stay here, Caleb told Lily. Dad, stay here.
He moved through the crowd toward Damien, keeping his movements controlled. The last thing he wanted was a scene. But if Damien tried anything, Caleb would end it. Fast. They met near the entrance. Damien smiled that cold, empty smile. Hell of an event, Damien said. You need to leave. I'm here to make a donation. That's allowed, isn't it? You're not welcome here. It's a public event. You can't legally remove me unless I cause a disturbance. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then I guess we'll have to wait until you do. Damien's smile widened. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to support Vivian's cause. You sued her this morning. Business is business. This is charity. Caleb wanted to hit him, wanted to drag him out of the barn and make sure he never came back. But Marco appeared beside him, along with James and Tony. A silent wall of muscle. Damien glanced at them, then back at Caleb. Fine, I'll leave. But tell Vivian I tried. Tell her yourself, she's right there. She won't listen. Then take the hint. Damien stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Caleb stood there, fists clenched, adrenaline surging. Roger clapped him on the shoulder. Handled that well, boss. I wanted to punch him. I know, we all did. They watched through the window as Damien got into his SUV and drove away. Only when the taillights disappeared did Caleb allow himself to breathe. The auction ended at midnight. The final total was $273,000, more than enough to fund the community center for the next year, and then some. Vivian announced the number to applause and cheers. People started gathering their things, saying their goodbyes, congratulating each other on a successful event. Caleb helped the servers clean up, stacking chairs, folding tablecloths. Lily had fallen asleep on one of the benches, curled up with her jacket as a pillow. He carried her to his truck and buckled her in, then went back inside. The barn was almost empty now, just Vivian and Maria and the crew. They worked in companionable silence, breaking down what had taken weeks to build. You should go home, Vivian said, appearing beside Caleb. You've been here since 5 a.m. So have you. I slept in the car on the way back from court. How'd it go? The hearing? Vivian smiled. Judge threw it out, said it was frivolous and a waste of the court's time. Damien's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Good. He tried one more thing on the way out, offered to drop everything if I'd just have dinner with him.
What'd you say? I told him I'd rather eat glass. Caleb laughed. Vivian laughed too, and for a moment the exhaustion lifted. Thank you, she said quietly, for tonight, for handling everything, for being here. Of course. I mean it. You saved this. When the lights went out, when everything was falling apart, you kept it together. She paused. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. They stood in the middle of the barn, surrounded by stacked chairs and folded tables, and Vivian took his hand. I have a question, she said. Okay, what are we doing here? You and me? Caleb's heart skipped. What do you want to be doing? I want this to be real, not just some temporary thing. I want to see where this goes. Even though I'm broke and barely keeping my life together? Especially because of that. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. You're real, Caleb. You don't pretend to be something you're not. You don't make promises you can't keep. She squeezed his hand. And you stayed. When you could have taken that job in Austin, when you could have walked away, you stayed. I'm not going anywhere. I know, that's why I'm asking. What are we doing? Caleb looked at her, this woman who'd somehow seen past all his failures and decided he was worth the risk. We're figuring it out, he said, together. Vivian smiled. Good answer. She kissed him, soft and slow, and Caleb felt something shift. Not fear, not uncertainty, just rightness. When they finally pulled apart, Maria was standing near the door, pointedly looking at her phone. We should probably finish cleaning, Vivian said. Probably. They got back to work, and by 1 a.m. the barn was empty. All the tables and chairs loaded into trucks. All the decorations packed away. All the trash bagged and ready for pickup. Caleb stood in the doorway, looking at the space one last time. It was just a barn again, empty and plain. But for one night, it had been something else, something important. You coming? Vivian called from her car. Yeah, just taking it in. It's just a barn. No, Caleb said, it's not. He locked the doors and climbed into his truck. Lily was still asleep in the passenger seat. He drove home slowly, careful not to wake her, and carried her inside. By the time he got her into bed, it was almost 2. He should have been exhausted, should have collapsed onto the couch and slept for 12 hours. But he felt wide awake. He went outside and sat on the porch, looking across the street at Vivian's house. The lights were on in her living room. He could see her shadow moving past the window. His phone buzzed. Can't sleep either? Vivian's text read, Nope. Want company? Caleb smiled. Always. 5 minutes later, she was sitting beside him on the porch, both of them staring up at the stars. We did good tonight, she said. Yeah, we did. Damien showing up didn't ruin it. Nothing could have ruined it. Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder. What happens now? We sleep, eventually. Then we wake up and do it all over again. That's not what I meant. I know. She lifted her head and looked at him. I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of us. Of letting myself believe it's real and then having it fall apart. Caleb understood. He'd felt the same way for weeks. The constant fear that he'd screw this up, that he'd revert to old patterns, that he'd wake up one day and realize he'd ruined the best thing that had ever happened to him. I can't promise it won't fall apart, he said honestly. I can't promise I won't mess up, but I can promise I'll try. Every single day. That's all I need, Vivian said. They sat in silence, the night wrapping around them, and Caleb realized something. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about what came next, wasn't planning his exit strategy, wasn't looking for the door. He was just here, present, and that was enough. The week after the event, Caleb woke up every morning expecting something to go wrong. Old habits died hard. Years of waiting for the other shoe to drop had trained him to never fully relax, never fully trust that things could just be good. But every morning, he'd roll over, check his phone for some disaster, and find nothing. Just normal life. Lily getting ready for school. Vivian texting him good morning. The house slowly becoming a home instead of a project. It was unsettling in the best possible way. On Thursday, he got a call from the community center director, a woman named Sharon with a voice that could cut through steel. I wanted to thank you personally, she said, for what you did at the event.
Vivian told me you basically ran the whole thing when she was stuck in court. I had help. Don't be modest. It doesn't suit you. Sharon paused. We're expanding the center, adding a new wing for a workshop program. Carpentry, electrical work, plumbing, teaching kids actual skills. That's great. We need someone to run it, someone who knows construction and can teach, someone the kids will actually listen to. Caleb's throat tightened. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose. The pay's not amazing, $35 an hour, but it's steady, year-round, and you'd be helping kids who need exactly what you can give them. $35 an hour was less than half what he'd made on those big commercial jobs, but those jobs had required him to live in motels, eat fast food every night, and miss everything that mattered. This would let him stay. When do I start? He asked. Sharon laughed. Monday, if you're serious. I'm serious. Good. Come by tomorrow and we'll do the paperwork. They hung up and Caleb sat there in his kitchen, staring at his phone. A job. A real one. Something that meant something. He called Vivian immediately. I got a job, he said when she answered. That's amazing. Where? The community center, teaching construction skills to kids. There was a pause, then Vivian's voice, warm and proud. Caleb, that's perfect. Yeah? Yeah, you're going to be incredible at it. I don't know. I've never taught before. You taught Lily how to use a nail gun. That's different. No, it's not. You're patient. You explain things. You don't talk down to people. She paused. Those kids are lucky to have you. Caleb felt his chest tighten with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Thanks. Come over tonight. We'll celebrate. Can't. Lily has a school thing. Tomorrow then. Bring Lily. I'll cook. You cook? I'm learning. It'll be an adventure. Caleb smiled. Can't wait. That evening, he sat in the back of Lily's school cafeteria for parent-teacher night, surrounded by other parents who all seemed to know exactly what they were doing. He felt out of place in his work jeans and flannel shirt, but Lily had insisted he come. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the patience of someone who'd been doing this for decades. Lily's doing wonderfully, she said, flipping through a folder of Lily's work. Her reading comprehension is above grade level. Her math is solid, and she's starting to make friends. Really? Caleb leaned forward. She hasn't mentioned that. She's been sitting with Emma Rodriguez at lunch. They're working on a project together for the science fair. Something in Caleb's chest loosened. Lily was making friends, building a life here, putting down roots. She talks about you a lot, Mrs. Patterson continued, about the house you're fixing up, about the barn you helped build. She smiled. She's proud of you. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. The idea that Lily could be proud of him felt impossible, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't the type to lie. Thank you, he managed. You're doing a good job. I know single parenting is hard. I'm trying. It shows. On the drive home, Lily was quiet, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Your teacher says you're doing good, Caleb said. Yeah. She said you're making friends. Emma's cool. She's into dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are cool? Lily smiled a little. You don't even know anything about dinosaurs. I know they're big and extinct. That's something. That's literally nothing. Agree to disagree. They pulled into the driveway, and Lily unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out right away. Dad? Yeah? Are you and Vivian together? Like, actually together? Caleb turned off the engine. Yeah, we are. Good. Yeah? She's nice, and she makes you less grumpy. I'm not grumpy. You used to be. Before we moved here. Caleb thought about that. She was right. He had been grumpy, tense, always looking over his shoulder for the next problem. Things are better now, he said. Because of Vivian? Because of a lot of things. Vivian, you, this place. He paused. Because I stopped running. Lily nodded slowly, processing that. Are you going to marry her? The question caught him off guard. I don't know. Maybe. Someday. Mom said you're bad at commitment. Mom's not wrong. But you're trying now. Yeah, I'm trying. Lily unbuckled and opened the door. Okay, just don't screw it up. I'll do my best. She went inside, leaving Caleb alone in the truck. His 9-year-old daughter had just given him relationship advice. And it was good advice. Don't screw it up. Simple. Impossible. Necessary. The next evening, Caleb and Lily walked across the street to Vivian's house carrying a bottle of wine and a bag of chips. Lily had insisted on bringing something, even though Vivian said she didn't have to. Vivian answered the door in jeans and an apron covered in flour.
What happened to you? Caleb asked.
I'm making pasta from scratch. It's harder than YouTube makes it look. Inside the kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere. Dough in various stages of completion. A pot boiling over on the stove. Do you need help? Caleb asked. Absolutely not. I've got this under control. Lily whispered to Caleb. She doesn't have this under control. I heard that, Vivian called from the kitchen. They ended up ordering pizza. The three of them sat around Vivian's dining table, eating pepperoni and laughing about the pasta disaster. Lily told stories about school. Vivian told stories about her first attempts at cooking when she was younger. Caleb just listened, watching the two of them interact. This was what he'd been missing his whole life. Not perfection, just presence. Being part of something instead of always standing outside looking in. After dinner, Lily curled up on the couch with a book while Caleb and Vivian cleaned up the kitchen. She's a great kid, Vivian said, scraping flour into the trash. Yeah, she is. You're doing a good job with her. I'm trying not to screw up. Vivian smiled. That's all any of us can do. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Vivian said quietly, Damien called me yesterday. Caleb's hand stilled. What did he want? To apologize. Or his version of an apology. She set down the dish she was holding. He said he'd been out of line. That he understood I'd moved on. That he'd respect my boundaries from now on. Do you believe him? No, but I want to. Vivian, I know he's manipulative. I know he'll probably try something else. But part of me just wants it to be over. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. Caleb dried his hands and turned to face her. If he shows up again, call me. Immediately. I will. I mean it. I know you do. She reached out and took his hand. But I can't live in fear forever. At some point, I have to believe he'll actually leave me alone. And if he doesn't? Then we deal with it. Together. That word again. Together. It used to terrify Caleb. Now it felt like the only thing that made sense. 2 weeks later, Caleb started at the community center. His first day, he walked into the workshop and found 8 teenagers staring at him with varying degrees of boredom and skepticism. Sharon introduced him, then left him to it. All right, Caleb said. I'm Caleb. I'm going to teach you how to build stuff. Who here has used a saw before? 3 hands went up. A drill? 5 hands. A nail gun? 1 hand. A kid in the back named Marcus who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Good. So most of you are starting from scratch. That's fine. We're going to start simple. Today we're building shelves. A girl in the front row named Tessa raised her hand. Why? Because shelves are useful. And because if you can build a shelf, you can build a lot of other things. Can we build something cool instead? Like what? I don't know, a skateboard ramp or something. Caleb thought about it. Tell you what, we'll start with shelves. Once everyone can do that, we'll talk about the ramp. The kids grumbled but got to work. Caleb moved between them, showing them how to measure twice and cut once, how to drill pilot holes, how to check if something was level. Some of them picked it up quickly. Others struggled, but they all tried. By the end of the day, every kid had built a basic shelf. They weren't perfect. Some were crooked. Some had gaps in the joints. But they were functional. Not bad for day 1, Caleb said. Tomorrow we'll sand them down and add finish. Marcus lingered after the others left. This was actually kind of cool, he said. Yeah? Yeah, can I take mine home? Absolutely, that's the point. Marcus picked up his shelf, testing its weight. My mom needs somewhere to put her plants. She's always complaining about them being on the floor. Then you just solved a problem. Marcus smiled. It was small, but it was real. And Caleb felt something shift inside him. This was why he was here. Not for the money. For this. Over the next month, life settled into a rhythm. Work at the community center. Time with Lily. Evenings with Vivian. The house was almost finished. Just small things left. Touch-up paint? New light fixtures. A garden Vivian had convinced him to plant in the backyard. Lily's science fair came and went. She and Emma built a volcano that actually erupted, impressing everyone and making a huge mess. Caleb stood in the back of the gym, watching her explain the project to judges, and felt a swell of pride so strong it almost hurt. Vivian was there too, standing beside him. "She's amazing," Vivian whispered. "Yeah, she is. She gets that from you. She gets that from herself." Vivian squeezed his hand. "You're allowed to take credit, you know. I'll think about it." That night, after Lily was asleep, Caleb and Vivian sat on his porch with a bottle of wine. The neighborhood was quiet. A few fireflies drifted through the air, blinking in the darkness. "I've been thinking," Vivian said. "About what?" "About selling my company." Caleb turned to look at her. "That's a big decision." "I know, but I built it to prove something to myself, to prove I could. And I did." She paused. "Now I want to do something else." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe something with the community center. Maybe something completely different." She smiled. "I just know I don't want to spend the rest of my life managing investments and sitting in board meetings." "What do you want?" "This." She gestured at the porch, the street, the quiet night. "Something real. Something that matters." Caleb understood that better than she knew. "You'll figure it out." "We'll figure it out," she corrected. "Right. We." They sat in comfortable silence, the wine slowly disappearing from the bottle. Then Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. "What?" Caleb asked. "It's from Damien's lawyer. They're dropping the restraining order appeal." "That's good, right?" "It means he's finally giving up." Vivian let out a long breath. "It's over." "You sure?" "As sure as I can be." Caleb wanted to believe it, wanted to think Damien had finally accepted reality and moved on. But something in his gut said it wasn't that simple. He was right. 3 days later, Damien showed up at the community center. Caleb was in the workshop with his students, helping a kid named Jordan cut a piece of plywood when Sharon poked her head in. "Caleb, someone's here to see you." "Can it wait?" "He says it's urgent." Caleb frowned but told the kids to take a break. He walked out to the lobby and found Damien standing there in another expensive suit, looking completely out of place among the worn furniture and kids' artwork on the walls. "What are you doing here?" Caleb asked. "I came to talk, man to man." "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree." Damien glanced around. "Is there somewhere private we can go?" Against his better judgment, Caleb led him to a small office Sharon had said he could use. He closed the door and crossed his arms. "You've got 5 minutes." Damien sat down in one of the chairs, relaxed and composed. "I want to make you an offer." "Not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to." $200,000. The number hung in the air between them. Caleb's mind raced. 200,000. More money than he'd seen in his entire life. "For what?" he asked slowly. "Walk away from Vivian, leave Clover Ridge, take your daughter and start over somewhere else." Damien leaned forward. "You said it yourself. You're a traveling construction worker. There are jobs everywhere. Take the money. Build a better life." Caleb stared at him. "You're trying to buy me off." "I'm trying to solve a problem." "I'm not a problem, and I'm not for sale." "Everyone has a price." "Mine's higher than you can afford." Damien's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Vivian and I have history, deep history. You're just a distraction, something new and shiny, but it won't last." "You're wrong." "Am I?" "How long have you known her? 2 months? 3? I was with her for 3 years. I know her better than you ever will." "You knew who you wanted her to be. I know who she is." Damien stood up, his composure cracking. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're nobody. A broke single dad living in a dump. You can't give her what she needs." "And you can?" "I can give her everything." "Except the one thing she actually wants," Caleb said quietly. "Freedom." Damien's face flushed red. For a moment, Caleb thought he might actually swing, but then he smoothed his suit jacket and forced a smile. "This isn't over," Damien said. "Yeah, it is." Caleb opened the door. Damien walked out without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Sharon was waiting near the entrance, arms crossed. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, just someone who can't take no for an answer. Want me to ban him from the property? That'd be great, actually. Sharon nodded. Consider it done. That evening, Caleb told Vivian about Damien's visit. They were sitting in her living room, Lily upstairs in the guest room doing homework. $200,000, Vivian said slowly. He offered you $200,000. Yeah. And you turned it down. Of course I did. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. That's more money than most people see in a lifetime. I know. You could have paid off your debts, given Lily everything she needs, started fresh. I already have everything I need. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I'm not going anywhere, not for money, not for anything. He took her hand. I meant what I said. I'm staying. She kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to convince herself it was real. When they pulled apart, she was crying. I love you, she whispered. It was the first time either of them had said it. The words hung in the air, fragile and huge. I love you too, Caleb said. And he meant it, more than he'd ever meant anything in his life. The next morning, Damien's SUV was parked outside Vivian's house again. Caleb saw it when he was taking out the trash. His first instinct was to march over there and drag Damien out of the car. But then he remembered what Vivian had said. She needed to handle this herself. He called her instead. He's outside, Caleb said. I know, I can see him. Want me to come over? No, I need to do this. Caleb watched from his porch as Vivian walked outside and crossed the street to Damien's SUV. She leaned down to the window. They talked for maybe 2 minutes. Then Vivian straightened up and walked back to her house without looking back. Damien sat there for another minute. Then he drove away. Vivian called Caleb 10 minutes later. What did you say to him? Caleb asked. That if he ever showed up here again, I'd file harassment charges. That I'd use every resource I have to make sure he faced consequences. And that I didn't love him, that I never really did. How'd he take it? Like a man who finally realized he'd lost. Think he'll actually stay away this time? I don't know, but I'm done being afraid of him. Caleb could hear the strength in her voice, the certainty. This was the Vivian who'd built a fortune from nothing, who'd survived everything Damien had thrown at her. She was going to be okay. They were going to be okay. 3 months later, on a Saturday in late summer, Caleb stood on his front porch and looked at the house. It was finished, every room painted, every fixture replaced, every crack patched. The roof was solid, the plumbing worked. The electrical didn't spark anymore. It was clean and whole and lived in. It was home. Lily came outside carrying a plate of cookies she and Vivian had made. They were lopsided and slightly burned, but they tasted good. You gonna stand there all day? Lily asked. Maybe. That's weird. I'm appreciating what we built. We built cookies. I meant the house. Oh, that too. Vivian came outside, wiping flour from her hands. Ready? For what? Caleb asked. The barbecue. People will be here in an hour. Right. The barbecue. They'd invited half the neighborhood, plus the crew from the barn, plus some of the kids from the community center. It was going to be chaos. Caleb couldn't wait. People started arriving at 2. Roger and his wife, Marco and his girlfriend, James and Tony, Sharon from the community center, Mrs. Patterson from Lily's school, Emma and her parents, the Hendersons, who'd sold them the barn and insisted on seeing what they'd done with it. The yard filled with voices and laughter. Caleb manned the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs. Vivian circulated with drinks. Lily and Emma ran around with some of the other kids, playing some complicated game that seemed to involve a lot of shrieking. At one point, Roger pulled Caleb aside. You did good, boss, Roger said. With all of this. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Sure you could have. Would have just taken longer. Roger clapped him on the shoulder. Proud of you. The words hit harder than Caleb expected. Roger wasn't the sentimental type. Hearing it from him meant something. Thanks, Caleb managed. As the sun started to set, people gathered in clusters around the yard. Someone had brought a guitar. Someone else started a fire in the pit Caleb had built last week. The smell of wood smoke mixed with the smell of burgers and the sound of conversation. Caleb found Vivian sitting on the porch steps, watching the scene with a soft smile. This is nice, she said.
Yeah, it is. You ever think you'd have this? No, never. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Me neither. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching their people, their community, their life unfold in front of them. Then Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Vivian's eyes widened. Caleb, wait, let me say this. He took a breath. I've spent my whole life running, from jobs, from relationships, from anything that required me to stay in one place and actually commit. And I told myself it was because I was chasing something better. But really, I was just scared. Vivian took his hand. Then I met you, Caleb continued. And for the first time, I wasn't scared anymore. Or maybe I was, but I wanted to stay anyway. You saw something in me I didn't see in myself. You believed I could be better. And you were right. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing flashy, just a band with a single small stone. It's not much, Caleb said. I can't buy you yachts or diamonds or anything like what Damien could, but I can promise you I'll show up every day. I'll do the work. I'll stay. Vivian was crying now, tears streaming down her face. So, Caleb said, his voice shaking slightly, will you marry me? Yes, Vivian said immediately. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then she kissed him, and somewhere behind them, people started cheering. Caleb had forgotten they had an audience. Lily pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around both of them. Finally, she said, I thought you'd never ask. Caleb laughed. Vivian laughed. And for a moment, everything was perfect. Not because there were no problems. Not because life would be easy from here on out. But because they'd built something together. Something real and solid and worth fighting for. Later that night, after everyone had left and Lily had gone to bed, Caleb and Vivian sat on the porch in the quiet. The fireflies were out again, drifting through the darkness. What are you thinking? Vivian asked. That I spent so many years looking for something I couldn't name, and it was here the whole time. What was? Home. He looked at her. Not the house, not the place. Just the feeling of being where I'm supposed to be. Vivian squeezed his hand. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. So are you. They sat there as the night deepened, the stars coming out one by one overhead. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car passed. Life moved forward, slow and steady. And Caleb Hunter, the man who never stayed, realized something profound. The hardest thing he'd ever built wasn't made of wood or steel or concrete. It wasn't the barn or the house or any physical structure. It was this, the life he'd chosen to stay for, the family that believed in him, the love he'd built with someone who saw past every failure and chose him anyway. He'd spent years chasing money and running from commitment, telling himself that the next job, the next city, the next opportunity would finally fill the hole inside him. But it never did, because what he'd been looking for couldn't be bought or found in some distant place. It had to be built, piece by piece, day by day, with patience and effort and the willingness to stay even when things got hard. And the truth was, staying was harder than running. It required showing up when you didn't feel like it, doing the work even when no one was watching, being honest about your failures and trying to do better. But it was worth it. Every single day of effort, every moment of doubt, every time he chose to stay instead of leaving, because this was what it meant to be human. Not perfect, not polished, just present, just trying. Vivian rested her head on his shoulder, the ring on her finger catching the porch light. I'm glad you stayed, she whispered. Me too. And he meant it, down to his bones. For the first time in his life, Caleb Hunter was exactly where he belonged. Not because he'd found perfection, but because he'd stopped running long enough to build something that mattered. A home, a family, a life. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.